Imagine reaching for a comfy little bathroom cabinet stocked with everything you need for that time of the month. Now throw the cabinet away, throw the bathroom away too. Because for most of human history, dealing with a period meant a strip of old wool, a prayer, and absolutely no help from anyone. And honestly, that's the tame part. Let's start in ancient Greece, where the cutting-edge feminine hygiene technology was, and I am not joking, a rag. Women tore strips from worn-out clothing, wads of wool from old garments, and used those. There's even a Greek word, rakoi, that just means rags. And here's the unsettling bit. One 19th century historian named Theodore Mommsen looked at temple records in Athens, saw women donating rakoi to the goddess Artemis, and quietly suggested these were used menstrual rags. He was so disturbed by his own theory that he openly wondered where on earth the priests stored them afterward. Picture that. You finish your week, and instead of tossing the evidence, you walk it down to the temple and hand it to a priest as a holy offering. Some women went a different route. In Greece, they also used sea sponges, the real ones, pulled from the ocean and reused. Spartan women, being Spartan, reportedly wore something closer to a snug little undergarment to hold everything in place, basically the ancient world's first period underwear, except it looked like a tiny bikini bottom. Leave it to Sparta to turn even this into athletic wear. But the products were never the scary part. The science was. Here's where it gets genuinely wild. Greek doctors, the followers of Hippocrates himself, believed that a woman's flesh was spongier than a man's, literally more absorbent, like a kitchen sponge soaking up everything she ate and drank. And the conclusion they drew from this was insane. They decided women needed to bleed, heavily and regularly, to release all that extra fluid. So if a woman's period was light or late, doctors didn't say, "Great, relax." They panicked. They prescribed remedies to, and this is the actual phrase, "bring out the blood." Let that sink in. The medical fear wasn't bleeding too much. It was not bleeding enough. There are even historians who think watching this whole process is part of what gave Hippocrates the bright idea that bleeding sick people might cure them. So the next time a doctor in a movie reaches for the leeches, you know who to thank. And that's not even the strangest part. Let's travel to Egypt, all the way back to around 1550 BC. We know about this because of something called the Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest medical documents on the planet. And tucked inside it is a reference to Egyptian women using soft rolls of papyrus as internal plugs. Yes, the plant. The same stuff they made paper out of, they also rolled up and used as an early tampon. Now here's a fun word for your next dinner party. The word tampon comes from an old French word, tampion, which just means a little plug or stopper, the kind of thing you'd jam into a hole to stop a leak. Which, is technically accurate, but it really takes the romance out of it. Over in Japan, women used rolled paper too, swapping it out many times a day. In Rome, the go-to material was wool. Across the world, in age after age, the answer was basically the same. Find something absorbent, hope it holds, and tell no one. There's even evidence from the Roman Empire of period tents. Special spaces where menstruating women were sent to ride out the week away from everyone else. Think of it as a forced staycation, except nobody asked if you wanted to go. Okay, deep breath. Because now we have to talk about the Romans and their beliefs. And this is the part where I genuinely lost my mind reading about it. His name was Pliny the Elder. He was a famous Roman author, a naturalist, a military commander, basically a respected smart guy of his time. He wrote an enormous encyclopedia called The Natural History, and in it he laid out, with total confidence, the supernatural powers he believed a menstruating woman possessed. I want to read you the list, because no comedian could write this. According to Pliny, a woman on her period could turn fresh wine sour just by being near it. She could make crops barren and dry up seeds in the garden. She could walk past a fruit tree, and the fruit would simply fall off the branches. Long before Isaac Newton sat under a tree wondering about gravity, the Roman explanation for falling fruit was, a woman walked by. She could dim the surface of a mirror just by looking into it. She could blunt the edge of a steel blade and dull the gleam of ivory. Bronze and iron would instantly rust. Hives of bees would die. And if a dog so much as tasted the blood, it would go rabid with a bite that could never be cured. I want to be clear. A grown man wrote this down as fact, and people believed him for over 1,000 years. But Pliny was just getting started. He also claimed that if a menstruating woman walked naked around a field, all the caterpillars, worms, and beetles would drop right off the crops and die. So in his mind, periods were simultaneously a curse that destroyed everything, and also a pretty solid pest control strategy. He couldn't even keep his own theory straight. And my personal favorite, Pliny believed a woman on her period could scare away storms and whirlwinds. The man genuinely thought you could calm a hurricane this way. Meanwhile, the same culture refused to let women on ships because they were considered bad luck. So women were too unlucky to sail, but also the one thing that could have saved the boat. Make it make sense. Now here's the kicker. If period blood was so dangerous it could rust iron and drive dogs insane, you'd think men would run a mile from it. Nope, they wanted in. There was a widespread belief that a man could use his wife's menstrual blood to keep her faithful. And in some folk traditions, a woman could secretly mix a little of her blood into a man's food to make him fall madly in love with her. So let me get this straight. The same blood that allegedly killed bees and ruined harvests was also the secret ingredient in a homemade love potion. The logic is, there is no logic. They feared it, they hated it, and they were absolutely trying to spike each other's dinners with it. And the weirdness did not stop when Rome fell. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where things somehow got more rustic. For a lot of women, especially in the countryside and among the poor, the menstrual product of choice was, well, nothing. They simply bled into their clothing and carried on. And here's the thing, that was completely normal. This was an era where many people believed that bathing too much could make you sick. So the modern idea that a period must be hidden, sealed away, and made invisible just wasn't the default yet. Some women used soft moss as an absorbent material, the same stuff people packed into wounds. Others used cloth rags they'd wash out and reuse, which is, by the way, exactly where the old phrase on the rag comes from. You've been quoting medieval period history this whole time and didn't even know it. But the medieval mind also took Pliny's superstitions and ran even further. Menstrual blood was now believed to have outright magical and even evil powers. In parts of Europe, people genuinely worried that a menstruating woman could cast spells or curses. So on top of cramps, mood swings, and a wad of moss, women now had to deal with their neighbors side-eyeing them as part-time witches, as if the week wasn't long enough already. And here's the part that should really make your jaw drop. You'd assume all of this nonsense died out centuries ago, right? It didn't. Fast forward to the early 1900s, and serious scientists were still chasing the idea that menstruating women released a mysterious poison from their bodies. They even gave it a name, the menotoxin. Real doctors in lab coats in the 20th century ran experiments trying to prove that a woman on her period could wilt flowers or spoil food just by touching them. This is the same era that gave us cars, airplanes, and radio. We could fly through the sky, but we were still convinced a lady could kill a houseplant with a single touch. Pliny was dead for nearly 2,000 years, and his bee theory was still getting funding. When you line it all up, the pattern is almost funny. For thousands of years across Greece, Egypt, Rome, Japan, and medieval Europe, half the population dealt with the exact same monthly reality, using nothing but rags, wool, sponges, moss, and rolled-up plants, all while the other half stood around, inventing increasingly unhinged reasons to be scared of. They blamed periods for sour wine, dead bees, falling fruit, rusty swords, rabid dogs, and bad weather. They built tents to hide women away. They wrote it into their greatest encyclopedias as hard science. And then, in the very same breath, they tried to sneak it into love potions. So the next time you're standing in a store, mildly annoyed at how many options there are on the shelf, just remember. A Greek woman was donating her supplies to a temple. An Egyptian was rolling up a sheet of paper. A medieval villager was being accused of witchcraft. And Pliny the Elder was somewhere, fully convinced, that the woman Numbers door could end a thunderstorm with the power of her cycle. History was strange, my friends. It was very, very strange. That's all for today. I'll be making more videos like this in the future, so subscribe to come along for the ride.